Hi, everybody. Okay, we are at 1,806 and we are burning the midnight oil. It is July 13th, 2025. So, Sunday, just minutes into Sunday. And let's see if everything is working. Okay. So it looks like everything is working. I don't know why my picture is not so clear. I'll work on that. I'll work on this camera issue. But anyway, um, did I not? Oh, geez. I don't think I pushed the update all. Matter of fact, I might stop everything and start again. Let's see. Yep, there it is. Okay. Am I live? Okay, so we are on. Yep. Here we go. We are at 1,806 days, July 13th, 2025. Yeah, Sunday, everything is coming together. It really is, you know, you're just speechless. It's hard to decide from what direction we should talk about. So tonight, being burning the midnight oil, being 1,806 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room and his life taken from him. Just decide to talk about the Epstein files since it's all over the news. It's kind of like dominating everything. And I've just really avoided it. But there's just no avoiding it, right? I think even the president's trying to avoid it. I think the Department of Justice is trying to avoid it, just like even more so than Richards, right? Even more so, they're trying to avoid Richards. Um, or are they? Or are they? That's the question. Because nothing is really what it seems. There and having Richard's case, uh, behind the scenes action and everything that's going on and everything that's coming together, things wouldn't be coming together and being transparent if things weren't going on behind the scenes. Um, because the deep state has so many bad actors, right? They have so many bad actors, and in El Paso to try to cover this up, and all the political actors that weigh it and say, okay, well, maybe we should address it or not. I mean, there's just so much here, that the point is that they could bury this. Um, the whole Epstein file thing, they could bury. Um, they could bury Richard's case, but they're not. They're not doing that. And and you say, what do you mean? They came out. They said there's no list. There's no list, um, and that let's just close it down. But it's not going away, and not everything is what we think it is, right? And when you look back at the 10 years that President Trump has been doing this since he came down that escalator, and right away, I mean, that was his first speech. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I thought it was it was so different, right? It was so different. It was so amazing. And what does all this have to do with Richard? I'll put that all together for you. But since President Trump made that very first speech where he announced that he was going to run for president in 2015 and said he was going to build the wall and make Mexico pay for it, wow, I think that that's what's happening right now, right? I think that's what is happening. He's building the wall, and he just announced that he's going to charge Mexico 30% tariffs. 30% tariffs. I mean, I think Mexico is going to end up paying for the wall. It's just jaw-dropping to see all of this happen in reality, right? Because there is no doubt about it that President Trump is collecting all of these tariffs, and the government had a surplus for the month of June, the first time there was a surplus since 2017. So, since he was in office, right? Since he was, uh, because, he went to the Wharton School of Finance. He is absolutely all about economics, the bottom line. He's always, for a long time, talking about ahead of schedule, under budget, ahead of schedule. That is always like his goal. Um, and he wants things to happen, right? He wants things to function. Because if they didn't function, he wouldn't be a billionaire because he's in the hotel business. He's in the golf course business, right? He's in the entertainment business. So things have to function, and he makes more profit if it is ahead of schedule and under budget. And I've been very fortunate to travel a lot, and I've been to Seoul where I saw the towers. He has many towers in Seoul, South Korea. So South Korea, he has um, he has definitely skin in the game to keep South Korea, um, uh, I would say, uh, business friendly. Not, we don't want to be communists, right? He has a reason why he wants it to be capitalistic. Um, and the same thing with Europe, the same thing with the United States. He has skin in the game. And so it makes him very different because he's not a grifter, he's not a grand theft larcenist. And and I don't want to put grand theft larcenist on every one of our government workers, that's for sure. But I can tell you in Richard's case, there's a lot of fraud and there's a lot of grand theft larceny because there's a lot of trafficking. There's a lot of trafficking, and some of that trafficking is right there off of Fort Bliss, taxpayers' possessions, right? What belongs to the taxpayer, and it's being trafficked. Or they're giving out the contracts, like the emergency intake center, which, could sleep 10,000 beds, y'all. That's a lot of money in a contract. And so all of that is paid for by taxpayers. And if you have bad actors that are giving certain contracts out, or hiring certain people in certain guarding positions, like DES Thomas Kane, to look the other way when there's trafficking going on. It could be trafficking of weapons, it could be trafficking of ammunition, it could be trafficking of parts, it could be trafficking of fuel, because Delta Battery 143, 143 is the fuel, right? And we know that there is a real connection with the trafficking of fuel, and you know, and trafficking of even body parts. I would say body parts, because of this funeral business tie and this. That is absolutely sacrilege, right? So we have these bad actors put in place to carry this out, to look the other way, to profit off of it. Um, and so we know that there's a difference between someone that just wants to get those deals and get government pay and have no skin in the game, right? They could just suck, and they have no skin in the game. Well, President Trump is very different from that, and that's why we absolutely support him, because he absolutely has something to lose. Um, and so his goal, it would be good for him and his family and his in the future, for the golf courses to do well, for the hotels to do well, right? And I mean really well, for all of his real estate to do well, and to be ahead of schedule and under budget. And that sounds good to me if that's the way he wants to run the country, right? He wants to run the country with a surplus, ahead of schedule, under budget. Sounds good to me. Sounds very good to me. And so and this has been going on for the last 10 years. This is proof after proof after proof. And every time he said it, there has been backlash, right? So much backlash that, uh, uh, there's been wrong accusations, absolutely false accusations, manufactured, fabricated. Sounds familiar? So now, as I go through this, you're going to hear all of the same uh, playbook, all the same playbook is what it has happened in Richard's case, right? The fabricated false stories to discredit, right? That is absolutely what happened in Richard's case, for Richard to want the military to function properly, to be ahead of schedule and under budget, and them going absolutely loony because they were up to no good. Sounds familiar, right? So you can really, once you look at what happened in the last 10 years with President Trump, and you look at what happened with Richard, it's the same playbook. It's the same playbook. That means it's the same players, the same criminal players that wrote the playbook. And so, with all of that, with all the attacks that he had, even the attempts on his life, which is absolutely connected to our son's case. The playbook's the same, the players are the same. So, though the deep state, you can say the deep state, I think that's a good name for them, because they are part of the government. They infiltrated. Um, uh, Certain positions, and they're actors, right? They're actors. So some of them you are very good actors, and so it's hard to always figure out who are those that are for America and those are against, especially in the last 4 years, right? So uh, this tells you that during the 4 years of Biden, Trump wasn't sitting on his hands, right? He wasn't counting his money, uh, in leisure from his hotels and everything. He was absolutely analyzing everything, and bringing forth a team to analyze it. And I'm not going to say, I'm not going to claim that he's perfect or whatever, but what I am going to claim is that when you are a builder that wants to be ahead of schedule and under budget, right? And you've done this for years and years, way more than 10 years. So you have a history of it for decades, that's how you run your business. And in order to be ahead of schedule and under budget, you have to organize a good team. You have to organize a good team, and then you also have to have a plan, a plan and your own playbook. And so this is what I think the deep state don't understand, that they have a playbook, but so does President Trump. President Trump has a playbook, right? He has absolutely, and in 4 years, I'm sure that he did a lot of editing. I'm sure that he he tested them, right? And you can see at the speed when he got elected and when he was sworn in on the 20th of January, it was unlike anything you've ever seen in the history of the United States because he has his own playbook and which is good for him because the deep state has an absolute playbook, right? And I can tell you that in Richard's case, you see it through the people in place, the bad actors in place on Fort Bliss in Richard's command, uh, from Dallas Hart to Bradford Bugado and into the VA, where they are right there at the disability benefits and death benefits, and right there in the CID to stop cases from going forward, to tamper, to leak, so that people that are bad actors can know what's going on if there's a report. So there's a lot of leaking. They have bad actors as generals, right? Bad actors as generals that are participating in the criminal activity. And then they have in mortuary affairs, because if you want to cash in on a body, and Richard was very valuable because they they could cash in a lot with him, and they can cash on his body multiple times, multiple times. They have a playbook, right? And so that is why the three autopsies. That is why the all the different claims, the witness testimonies that he's in the United States, but also in Mexico because he was divided. He was divided, kind of like the baby in the Bible. The mothers were fighting over the baby and asked King Solomon what to do, and he's like, "Well, you could just cut the baby in half, right?" That's uh, nightmare for us, but this is more and more testimony, more and more evidence for that. I mean, we know from witness testimony, knife was used. We know that they absolutely dismembered Richard. We know that it was very upsetting to a lot of people. So much so they were heavily on drugs. Um, oh, and visibly contorted. I think that's the good description of what we've been told. Contortion. When you have participated in that kind of um, activity, the destruction of a U.S. Army soldier to that extent, there's a contortion. Um, and we've seen those kind of faces when we were on Fort Bliss and in the meetings, absolutely contorted faces. And, they didn't even bring in the people from Richard's unit, right? So very nervous, very shaky, very, you can tell they were very upset. Look at Richard's captain was crying, and they're telling us this narrative, and we're like, okay, that doesn't explain why his captain is crying like he is in such a, you know, it's not like, oh, a little tear. It is absolute, like, suppression. The crying came from a suppression of something so bad, you know, something so bad. So, uh, absolutely, um, there is two playbooks here. And there might be more. There might be a Pentagon playbook, because the Pentagon is in real trouble, right? The Pentagon is real trouble, and they make a lot of money off of the mortuary affairs if they have war, right? Um, and I did not realize what kind of playbook they had. I really didn't. I just didn't. I just didn't realize how evil-minded these people are. I mean, they're just so evil-minded. It's so it just has taken us almost 5 years. Well, it has taken 5 years. It's 5 years, to understand their level of evil, of their playbook, and that's the best way to describe it. And if you look at the way the media has presented things, you absolutely see that those same plays over and over and over again. Especially if you're paying attention like we are, we're just paying attention all the time. And so, with President Trump coming in January 20th, 2025, he absolutely opened up his playbook the second after he took his oath of office and started making check marks. And I have a red pin here that helps me check off the things that I'm supposed to be doing. Um, when we're in our plan of action to get Richard's remains back. Um, all the different things that we're always adjusting to the new news coming out. And what we have seen is that President Trump is, well, evidence absolutely confirms that President Trump, his administration, is working very hard to return Richard's remains to us. That is what we're seeing. Since January 20th, 2025, there has been step after step after step that, in this deep state, you have to remember this is a, a battle, just like on a football field, two different playbooks, and they are pounding. They are pounding, and they're trying to move the ball. Right? They're trying to move the ball. I mean, I love football. I don't watch football so much because they kind of destroyed it with their new rules and stuff. But everyone knows you have four downs. You want to move that ball at least 10 yards, right? At least 10 yards. And I think the American people, um, right now, I think they get it. They absolutely get it, because, of course, they voted for Trump to come in. And instead of, Democrats and Republicans, I think it is the playbook of those um, that absolutely are part of the grand theft larceny, I call it. Those that want the contracts, those that are the government workers that don't want it to ever end. They like their benefits, they like their retirement, they like, every even the bennies, right, or the perks. They like the perks of what's going on, and especially the contracts and everything. They like all those perks, and they like that they are respected for um, being part of the government, right? I mean, everybody is like, okay, thank you for your service, and go USA, and rightfully so. But some of those are bad actors, and they've taken advantage, and they have absolutely stolen so much money, and so you can see by the latest numbers that June, President Trump's administration posted a surplus for the first time since 2017. This is a huge indication that he is trying to get Richard's remains back to us. That sounds kind of funny, right? But look, you have a lot of money that has to be paid out through USAID, through these NGOs, to bribe these people, um, and to operate that whole thing at the front door of the United States. And those spigots have been cut off because, and of course, there's California, and there's places around the country that he's had to do too, but there's no place like El Paso. Okay, it's the front door of the United States. It is known for its trafficking, and it cost a lot of taxpayers money, and a lot of grand theft larceny from the bad actors. A lot of people there that absolutely depend on US aid and government contracts and government jobs, um, from Texas Tech University Health Science Center to UTEP to Fort Bliss to even in Juarez, to the funeral business, to even, I mean, you name it. It is just, there's no, all of the trafficking, all of the schools, all of it's just, there's no place like it. Okay, there's just no place like it. Um, and you don't see around El Paso a lot of farms, right? Uh, you don't see a lot of uh, industry, right? Um, you would think that I could name a whole bunch of bunch of industry that I would suggest to El Paso that would be honest way of making money. But you see a lot of empty buildings downtown El Paso, a lot of these magnificent buildings, and they're empty. They're empty, okay? Because the money that um, is running El Paso is the trafficking and the contracts, and the military. And of course, the contracts are military government. So that the spigot is turned off. This June surplus is a good indication that that money has been uh, slowly turning off, turning off, turning off. And of course, you know, 10 yards at a time, 10 yards at a time, right? This is playbooks. And so you have to have a lot of patience. I know the American people want a touchdown. They want the touchdown right away, right? They want that long shot and let's do it. And so here we are 6 months in, and people want the Epstein list. Uh, they want transparency, rightfully so, because without transparency, then we are not a republic, right? We're not a republic then. Why do we even have a Congress, right? If we don't have transparency, then we could just have some kind of a king, and he can rule, and we could save a lot of money, or and then it's all him, and he can release what he wants, or she, And we can have a queen, we can have tyranny, we can have, oh, name these governments that, you don't know anything what's going on, because it's not a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Um, and so, uh, that's why transparency, that's why we have FOIAs. We have open records, and they are supposed to give us open records. And we pay a lot of money, and we have digits. It's very easy today to do open records. Um, and or they can post everything. They're supposed to post everything online so that we can see what they're doing. They get all of our information. They have access, they have access, and they have access. And this is the problem. They had access to everything. I can tell you that because they used that, they weaponized it against Richard, and they weaponized it against us. I mean, they had things from Richard's records that even my mother didn't even know, since we adopted Richard from Poland. They had everything, and they contacted people, and they have access, they have transparency, and of course, some of these bad actors in the media, they didn't have to ask for FOIAs. They got leaks. They got leaks. They didn't have to go through the FOIA channels to wait the 10 days to, also have to deal with those that don't want to give you it. They feel like they don't have to, and then you have to write the AG to make them give it to you and all this stuff. No, these are bad actors that absolutely, hey, I have my husband, my wife, my sister, my brother, my co-conspirator there in the whatever agency, and they just leak, right? Like Tavita Nusa leaked, like Nieto leaked, um, and on and on. There was just so many leaks. So, it's just uh, these these two playbooks right now that are going back and forth. And because of our son's case, we have gotten we've gotten good real estate to see it, right? We've gotten good, right, front row seats, right in the middle. No, we're in the ring. We're in the ring. Okay. Forget about the front row seats. We're right in the ring, because we're being targeted, right? Our son was targeted. They did the most horrible things to him to silence him, and so we've seen these um, people that you wouldn't even believe, like our generals. You wouldn't even believe our media. Our media is so, gosh, they're so deep state. They're so deep state, and so we've seen what those that don't have skin in the game, that are just, you know, grifters, or they just suck off of the government, a taxpayer, right? That's, uh, and I'm not trying to even put them down, because this is how, over the decades, uh, this has been a stumbling block for all of us, right? This has been a stumbling block. But then you have someone like President Trump, who has real skin in the game, real real estate, real years and years of putting together businesses, loads of businesses. I mean, his financials are just jaw dropping, amazing, absolutely amazing, far more amazing than Musk, okay? Because Musk gets a lot of government contracts. And President Trump, when, and I looked him up, my husband and I, we go, okay, let's look at his financials. What, who is he? And you know where he puts his treasure, right? Where he puts his treasure, where he puts his talent, where he puts his faith into. Then that's how you know the man, right? If he's going to put the money into it, you know the man. So to see his businesses it was just it's just been amazing. And so to have him come in and try to, uh, build the wall and make Mexico pay for it. Um, people, I was like, wow, we have a deficit. We have at that time, it was a $50 billion deficit every month to Mexico, right? I don't even know what it is today, but we were paying so much money every month to Mexico. For him to say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, he is an economist, right? And they made it all racist and everything, right? They just because they want that deficit, right? They want the deficit because that's their contracts, that's their funeral businesses, that's their disability benefits, that's their whatever that they depend on that money. And so that they hated him for it, but they weren't honest to the people why, right? Um, you know, they weren't honest, and so they, over these years, uh, I think that we have clearly seen their dishonesty. I saw it at January 6th. I hear that there might be a commission coming. A lot of dishonesty with that, a lot of dishonesty with the Russia, loads of dishonesty with our son's case. I mean, they look at they didn't even call, they never even notified us, right? Um, and then they just threw us out when we started asking questions. They threw Richard off the rolls so that we would have nowhere to go because of jurisdictional laws, right? It would just be, and then when we got there, when we got to El Paso, when they put us back on the rolls, because, there was that delay, people were like, why aren't you going there? Well, they threw us out. They said that they wouldn't meet with us, right? Why go to Fort Bliss if they're, even though we have ID cards, since my husband is retired, they wouldn't give us a time of day because they had taken Richard off the rolls. So we had to first, before we could even go to Fort Bliss, we had to work really hard to get the social media going, to get pressure on the military, to get them to put Richard back on the rolls. And this so that we could even go there, right? I mean, we would go there anyway, but you want to be able to meet with them. You want to be able to get some cooperation to find out what the heck happened, right? And at that time, we absolutely had no clue that it was so bad. I mean, I had told our oldest son that I believed that someone killed Richard, right? I believed that then right away. Um, because, there was no other explanation why Richard wouldn't call us. He was so good at, we're not like phony people, right? Um, and some people are really hard to believe that, but people that know us and people in Ireland that know us, they would even come over and do some work and like, I can't believe your kids are not on their phone. My kids are always on their phone. Your kids are not on their phone. I'm like, I don't want them to be on their phone all the time. I want them to live, right? Um, I don't want, and I trust it. I trust my children, and Richard was doing so good, and there were so many things going on. Um, so it, it's just the uh, and then the lies, absolute lies. Think about the whole Nadal Baim thing. We got it in less than an hour. We gave it to them, and they started lying to us. Delay, delay, delay. And then you find out about Danae Katzen and Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, which connects it to the Walmart case. And then you look into the Walmart case, and what is it? Delay, 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 lie, 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 delay, delay, delay. Same thing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, They really wanted to just interfere with the election. They really were targeting President Trump in all of this, whether you like him or not. That is absolutely what was happening. And so, what were they doing with him? Lie, 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 delay, 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 lie, 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 attack, attack. He got searched. We got searched without a warrant. He got searched. Mar-Lago, and his is macro because of everything that who he is, right? Who he is. I mean, Mar-Lago is not the same as our house, it just takes a few minutes for our house, but look, Mar-Lago and then the whole security level, the top secret information and all of that stuff. And they just absolutely attacked him for all of that. No respect for his position as presidency. It was for our country, for the votes that he got, and that's what I mean by that, because those votes, they really um, uh, were just hammering him, and he still got the votes because he worked his butt off. And everybody knows that he worked his butt off to get elected both times. And so here we are with all of that background that I gave you, these playbooks, this playbook of the deep state, of delay, delay, lie, 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 false stories, fabricated stories. And I can tell you right now with Richards, it's fabricated what they gave us. The January 6th was fabricated. What they were saying, Russia, 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 was fabricated. We know that now. What they were saying in different uh, commissions, and even now, what they were saying about Biden, about his health, was absolutely fabricated, false stuff. What they were saying with Kamala, even the one interview, they even had to change it. It was false stuff, and so it's clearly we have to take all that into consideration when we look at the Epstein files, the Epstein case, right? And we know that it is so bad, okay? We know that it is so bad. And I don't know if the American people um, or the public is prepared for how bad it is. And I think that needs to be weighed. And I think that's, you know, do we need to just hear it? Do we need to hear what they've done, what they were doing? Um, because in Richard's case, it's so bad. Y'all, it's so bad, right? Um, because let's take Richard's name out of this. He's a U.S. Army whistleblower soldier from Fort Bliss, right? And what they did to target him, to absolutely, continuously, unlawfully, unjustly retaliate against him psychologically, that was part of their plan. Part of their playbook is to set you up so that you have some major issues, and then uh, uh, psychologically attack you. You saw that with Glendon Oakley Jr., I think, was a really good example. But I know that they did that with Asia Graham. They will do some, you're wanting to whistleblow, or they frame you for, and then uh, they just attack you. And then because they have bad actors, even in the hospital even, and they do, y'all. They do. They have bad actors in the judicial system, in the hospital, in the military leadership, um, in the records, in CID, in the MPs, you name it, in the FBI. They have bad actors. And I don't want to say that those institutions are bad. I'm talking about the individuals. The individuals are bad actors, and they set you up to create a record of trouble and mental health problems. And they do that over and over and over again. It's a playbook. It is absolutely a playbook. Do y'all agree with me on that one? I can't tell you how many cases I looked at. Um, I would say Elder Fernandez is one of them. Uh, over and over, there's so many. Um, Perfectly healthy, strong, beautiful soldiers, or I would say service members. And if they become a whistleblower, all of a sudden they want to frame you, and they want to label you as mentally unfit. And with Richard, it just didn't stick. It just didn't stick. They couldn't get it. They couldn't get it right. There were too many loose ends with it, and they tried to control it. They could try to control it with the lawyer of El Mayo, right? Ray Velarde, right? They tried to control the narrative, to control the cases with a billionaire. That's like saying, we're going to assign President Trump's lawyer or Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer to Richard Halliday, Richard Halliday's case, right? That's what they were doing. With Jaime Esparza signing off. I mean, they were really putting everything into it to try to control paperwork and everything surrounding Richard. And it just, even with all of that, it didn't stick. It's kind of like the Walmart case. They tried so hard, right? I mean, they had Michael G. Mayella in the FBI office, in the DA's office with Jaime Esparza. He's this trained hacker. For the cybersecurity for Walmart. They had Jules Tuganon Chan as the responder with Manny Chavira, right? And giving Manny Chavira just days after, the chief of police without even having a peace officer's license, which is so illegal. And can you imagine how the police officers felt to have such a an appointment, right? It was just so bad, and of course, there's been a lot of things going on in the background because of that. So, of course, the cartel is tied to Richard, um, with Fort Bliss. And what do I mean by that? To target him. The cartel was targeting him. I mean, they put their best people on it, their best people from billionaires on it. And of course, we know that the silencing of him, of our son, is tied to cartel. Of course, the prime suspect is Dallas Wayne Hart, but he's totally connected to cartel, and Jonathan Ambrose and all of that. So, you know, if they're going to do that with Richard's case, with the media, with the highest paid lawyers, as assigned lawyers, with the chief of police, A&R Chavira Auto Group, to target Richard starting in 2019, and with Bob Moore. Bob Moore was a co-conspirator as early as that to target Richard, with his wife, Kathleen Gannon. So, there's just all the whole timeline shows that they were preparing, um, to if they had to end his life, and they absolutely did that. And then, of course, the whole cover up. And Richard, of course, was in communication with many different agencies. So there was, um, let's just say President Trump absolutely knows, and all evidence confirms now his administration is working very hard to get Richard's remains back to us and to get justice. That's very clear, um, because of all the circumstances. He extradited those 29 cartel members, big cartel members, finance the one cartel member is controls all the money, right? Controls all the money, and the son of El Chapo Guzman just made this big plea deal, right? And Mexico just had a fit, and now they're even going to like change laws about extradition and plea deals and everything because they are just really upset because they're complicit in it and implicated in this criminal activity. Right? These are narco politicians, the Pan Party. That is Maru Campos Galvan, right? She's just totally implicated in all of this. So, and so is Scheinbaum. And so, how does President Trump respond? He's not kissing their butt. He's slapping on a 30% tariff. Okay? He's slapping on that hurts them. That hurts them because they like to sell us stuff. We have a deficit. Normally we have a deficit with them, and so and if they are going to, this USA thing, through charities and cashing in on migrant deaths, and that's why they wanted to keep Richard. It's our the evidence that we have um, leads to us to say this, that they wanted Richard to be a John Doe in Mexico because then he's a John Doe migrant and they could get government funds on his death. Okay. And then in the United States, they wanted to um, identify him and then impersonate family and then cash in, tell us, oh, remember Jay Paulin? Oh, he just walked away. Just let it go, calling us. Oh, it just takes some months. He's just trying to, uh, you know, burn out his frustration, and just let him go, and don't worry about him. Look, uh, all now with all of the evidence that we have, it leads us to accuse. I guess that is a good word. To accuse, to allege. Allege is probably a better word. I would say accuse, allege, because the evidence is so stark, um, that they identified him and they were cashing in on him on his death benefits and his um, uh, disability benefits. Um, and then they were manipulating everything when we came into the picture. But they absolutely are impersonators. We know that because Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia impersonated a Walmart mass shooting victim and she went, she even got her apostille. Got all her paperwork done to be the impersonator. And she cashed in $200,000 of that victim's funds money. Her family did. And wrongfully so. And I think her fraud even led to other fraud. Um, and so they absolutely do impersonation in order to collect benefits and everything. So with all of that, you can look at what's going on with the Epstein files. You think that Trump, who knows the worst way more than what we know, because look, if Mexico, if he's going to reveal and prepare people, how, look, that whole death um, crematorium of piling rotting bodies, uh, that was not released by, oh, honest media. Okay? No, no. This was absolutely moving the ball 10 yards. Okay? That's what that was. That was Trump winning 10 yards. It might have been more. It might have been more because what that has revealed is huge. And they wanted to give just a little, like, oh, 10 bodies, right? 10 rotting bodies. No. Now we have upwards, even maybe over 1,000 bodies. Okay. Um, and they've been doing this for a long time. So I think it's a lot of bodies. Okay. Um, the whole thing with the intake center, um, I don't know how much evidence was destroyed with that, because that is just huge evidence of things that we don't want to know, but we need to know, because it's so devastating what they did to the miners. But this rotting body dumping ground, um, of the cartel's dumping ground. Um, it's it's just it absolutely was a huge revelation. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a moving the ball forward into transparency. And the Epstein files, it's kind of like Wiener's laptop, right? Or even Hunter's laptop. It's supposed to be, like law enforcement were throwing up, you know? It's just that bad. Um, if law enforcement throw up and get nauseous and throw up from what they see on these laptops, and these files and these videos and pictures, um, you know that it's really bad because they've seen so many things, right? Um, the Epstein, of course, there are files. Of course, there are probably tons of lists. Because what they do, the deep state, is try to make money on all of this, right? So of course there is a paper trail. Of course there are files, because it's just like with Richard, they're not going to just throw him in the desert for the coyotes. I think that was a diversion, the DES Thomas Kane, he's absolutely implicated. He's not going to tell us the truth. That was a diversion to shock us and to think that our sons was just disposed of in the desert and that was it. No, these people are more evil, e- eh, and I don't even want to use the word sophisticated, right? Because um, Texas EquiSearch used that word for the grave of Vanessa Guillen, and he said it was the most sophisticated crime grave he's ever seen. Um, and I don't want to use that word because it sounds too positive for this evil. It's a very evil playbook that they have, and uh, they're not going to give up on 500,000 plus another plus whatever other thousands of dollars, maybe another $100,000 that they could collect on Richard. Okay? On his remains. They're just not going to do it. They're just too greedy. They want the money, and they've got the IDS Pablo in their hands, they've got the CID in their hands, they've got their FBI in their hands there. Um, they've got the funeral homes, they got the purchase, they've got the Bill Hicks, the DA, they've got, you know, well, they had to work real hard to get the DA in there, right? And I would even say the governor, right? The governor, because where is he? You know, he's the one that appointed Bill Hicks, and they've got the representative, right? They've got the representatives, and I even think they've got the senators, right? So they were, and the only way they can have those individuals compromised like that is that they're donating to them. They're giving them money. So they're not going, so they're very greedy. They have fine-tuned their evil syndicate network. Um, so much so, look, they sent us people to get information, to be with us over all the time. They sent Danae, right, to control the narrative and to mislead us. So absolutely, they their their the nature of their evil business is to try to cash in. And all the evidence absolutely corroborates that. So for Epstein, all of the files, all of the videos, all of the missing people or those that have died, um, all of that is part of a grand theft extortion, or it's to make money. It's to make money to get power. And so, of course, there are lists and records and everything. But we had 4 years of Biden, right? And things got, very, very messy because we really didn't have a leader. So how many people, you could say, "Oh, it's Obama. Oh, it's um Dr. Jill," right? I've heard all kinds of stories on, "Oh no, it's his right-hand man who was leading the country, who was giving orders, who had that power to give the orders." And were there fights inside? I mean, you have the Trump administration, 6 months in, and you see conflict. You don't think there was conflict in the background of the Biden? I mean, absolutely 100%. You have the press secretary, what was her name? She just even quit the Democrat Party to be independent. So So I absolutely know that Trump knows, that Pam Bondi knows, and how are they going to handle Richard's case when that comes to light, and it's coming to light, absolutely, uh, day after day after day. It's being more and more exposed, just like the Walmart case is more and more exposed. I just was on a little bit yesterday, um, uh, uh, watching some of the chats, and the people absolutely know that they were lied to with the Walmart case. Um, and they have no good words for Veronica Escobar. I mean, if she wins re-election, I'll have to really, I don't know. I just don't see how she can do it. I don't know. It will have to be really no challenger, right? No challenger, because she is not liked, y'all. El Pasoans do not like Veronica Escobar for good reason. She's a really evil deep state narco politician. Okay. She really is. And she means people harm. Okay. She means people harm. And I can say that because I'm in the ring. I'm in the ring. Um, so to speak. So to speak. So, um, Yeah, so absolutely. I don't think that we understand everything that's going on. I don't think we understand the evil that goes on behind the scenes. Um that are that Epstein reveals, and how explosive that will be um when that all comes out and is released, when there is so many other things that still need to be addressed. So that when the time is right, I think all of that will be released. But President Trump doesn't even have most of his appointments in, right? So there's a lot of delay with getting his appointments in. Um, and there's a lot of mutiny still, uh, in obeying what the Supreme Court has said, the whole thing with the illegals, um, deportations, all of that. There's a lot of mutiny there. And so I think this is a playbook. I think it's a playbook. And I think that uh, for something as explosive as the Epstein files are, the the other plays need to come first. There needs to be his administration needs to be running a little bit smoother before this happens. And we have mutiny at the Pentagon. Um, Look, they just even foreign diplomacy. Uh, they wanted to start a war, right? They wanted to start a war. This whole thing with Iran, this whole thing with California. Um, so I think he is being very deliberate in when this gets released, even though there's a demand from the people, um, that the ball hasn't moved close enough to release the Epstein files. Uh, that's how I see things, because there's too much mutiny. There's too many generals that still need to be taken out of our uniforms. Take take those stars off of them. They are just up to no good. Um, and so there's a lot of justice that needs to happen. And I feel that way about our son's case also. Um, I can tell you every day things are happening that are bringing us closer and closer. And I have a lot of people that will, close to us that say, when are you just going to sue the hell out of them? Right? When are you just going to sue the hell out of them? Um, yeah, that's a good question, right? That's a good question. And we've been very, very patient, and uh, but not patient just like doing nothing. We've been working our butts off to uh, to get the answers, to get our son's remains, to get everything um, in place, to get accountability, and that is, to move that ball forward, to move that ball forward. And and people that are on the other side will watch these live streams, right? Because they want to know what our playbook is, right? They want to know our playbook. And God's hand is all over this. And when you have God on your side, the miracles just happen. And it's this what are the chance that part of Richard's remains, and think about what I'm saying, and that I have to say that his mother, um, that part of his remains ended up at this dump, this rotting body dump, and if it wasn't at this rotting body dump that was absolutely connected to Purchase Funeral Homes, Martin Funeral Homes, because of the connection with Bill Hicks, with Chris Martin, with Fort Bliss. They're connected. They're all connected. With Nadal Baim. If it wasn't this one, there's another one. Okay? Then how many of these crematorium dumping yards with rotting bodies piled up, and zoom into those pictures if you dare, because those are mild compared to what Epstein pictures look like, what the laptop from hell looks like. This is it is and it is and it is so bad to see something like that, and to know that there are individuals in uniform there, that this is cartel connected, that this is narco politician connected. Yeah. So this is my, I'm just trying to relay what we have been through for 5 years and what has happened since January 20th for In the Line of Duty, and everything else that has happened with the cartels. Before that, you couldn't even mention the word cartel. Now you have extradition of cartels. You have just the whole thing with this Santa Teresa jet port of entry, the jet port. Yeah, all of this stuff has been coming together. And now with um, this funeral cartel, pan narco politicians that are part of Bill Hicks, Bill Hicks is like, I don't know if he's a family member to Veronica Escobar. They're so close with Bob Moore, Bill Hicks, Veronica. I mean, they're close, y'all. Um, yeah, for that to be all connected, um, we are moving the ball forward. That's what I'm saying. Forward, 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 forward to the goal. And when and I have to say that there are some things that we just don't know, and that's where faith and belief and trust come into play. And we do know this, that President Trump was the target. He was the target because they could have blown Richard off really easy if it wasn't for a chief law enforcement officer paying attention and wanting order in our Pentagon ahead of schedule, below budget. And that was President Trump. And because Richard was a witness for someone that wanted to hear what he had to say, because he was a whistleblower, an official whistleblower that would absolutely be interested in what he had to say and would take action like audits, like investigations, and hold these people accountable, Richard was a threat. And I hope that makes sense. And all of our evidence, that's what it says. It doesn't say anything else. It doesn't say anything else. They were criminally trafficking all kinds of stuff, and they were in bed with the cartel, funeral business, grand theft larceny people. Fort Bliss leadership was in bed with them and more, and the FBI there. And of course, human resources. Why was Neto even there? Why was George Toros even there? And why is George Toros, you know, why is his wife in Texas Tech University Health Science Center, right? And working with Patrick Crucius's sister-in-law, and of course Mario Raskin Ortiz. Mario Raskin Ortiz, the chief medical examiner, is the key to everything about this, right? He's the key to everything about this with Leilani Hart. Um, those two. I mean, without him, that's why they protect him so much. But he was in Texas Tech University Health Science Center, and of course, getting paid, loads of money. I mean, it's millions of dollars he's collected, and he's an illegal foreign national in the country illegally because he lied on his visa, and the waiver that they did was a joke. It's all a joke. And that was Veronica Escobar tried to come to bat for him. She's the one that brought him over. And he's, connected to Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia and Danae Katzen and this whole funeral business network. So, yeah, this whole mortuary affairs network. So, why are they there when they have all of these close family ties and close ties to El Paso and close ties to Juarez? That is a human resource I mean, that is set up by human resources. We need to have someone from a whole different state come and work there at the El Paso field office. But no, they are absolutely implicated in this whole criminal trafficking of billions of dollars. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. I'm just speaking without any notes, without any, just from my heart. And I just want to say thank you so much to Danielle. Thank you for coming on for your prayers. And Anicia, thank you for your prayers. Brenda, thank you for coming on. And yes, it is so sad because, but we want to break this grasp on El Paso, on the United States, on Fort Bliss. Yeah, and that means, finding Richard's remains, which, when we were getting bombarded with all the nasty messages for months and months every day, they would say, "You're never going to find him. You're never going to find him." Well, um, this is where, I'm like, whatever, whatever. Because these are evil people. Why would I even believe them? Why would I even trust in them? Why would I even be intimidated by them? These are evil people. And that their whole intent is to do that. So why would I even fall into their net? Um, and and I knew they were trying to delay and mislead us, and um, but you still have to follow everything because then they'll use that against you. It is crazy. It is so crazy to be in the ring, but God's on our side. And they never intended this whole thing with Western Frontier Trading suing Nadal Baim and his wife Isis Chavira, and Isis Chavira is the close ties to Manny Chavira, very close. Y'all, it's look, they are absolutely getting ready for possibly indictments, for that to happen. And where is the news on that, right? Where is the news to say, oh my gosh, that man that went into the Dollar General and said there he's being sued right now, and his wife is related to the chief of police of the El Paso ISD. I mean, you can't even, where's the news on that? That's such a huge story. So the silence is also evidence, um, and the cartel ties with them, with Willie Moya and Arturo Alba, who were both executed. Um, that would be part of this story they could write. It's just huge. But you know, uh, it'll all come out, and even though they said we'll never find him, they're liars. And now we have all this revealed to us, and there is a really big chance, and maybe that's why they don't want to do the identification of these bodies. And that's Cesar Haragi, the attorney general there, is like wanting to shut everyone up. Shut up, shut up. Um, it's just, it's I think they're just making it very, very clear that they are implicated by their actions, and their lack of wanting to get to the bottom of this. They should have called in all kinds of help to get these bodies cleaned up and identified, and show them some respect. But no, he's more interested in keeping the sacrilege going, and telling the family members to shut up. So, but we won't. But we won't. So thank you so much for coming on. And I think from what I heard from the families, are sick and tired of it, just like we are. And we've had enough of them, and we absolutely see through their BS. And you're going to hear some things about charitable organizations, and also religious organizations, but that's part of their plan too. They just like they infiltrate our military, just like they infiltrate our beautiful city structures, just like they will infiltrate our media. They've also infiltrated our charities and our religious centers, and it's going to get ugly. But you know this, that just because they've infiltrated, um, it- that doesn't tarnish God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. Okay, that tarnishes them. And this is just an attack. And, we've been a little bit, I wouldn't even say totally asleep at the wheel. Maybe we've had, I mean, a lot of people say, we've been asleep at the wheel. We've been asleep. I think that from my perspective, we couldn't even imagine that they would do the things that they do, you know? Um, so we weren't even looking for it. At least I wasn't looking for it, these evil things. And call me, naive, and I guess, that's a good word for it. Um, but isn't that a beautiful thing, to be naive of this kind of depth of evil, right? Um, so, and I wouldn't call it innocent, not innocent, um, but naive, and I would call it more of a sanctification, when I've been very fortunate to have beautiful parents, and a beautiful husband, and of course life has its problems, but I've been surrounded by amazing people, amazing grandparents, and so I just did not have that kind of depth of that thinking, that this kind of evil could be. and now I do, unfortunately. And I'm telling you that the Epstein case is pretty evil. It's very evil. And so is the laptop from hell, and so was Wiener's laptop, and so is Richard's case. So it's pretty explosive. All of it's pretty explosive, especially if you're going to out some people in the Pentagon and in the Congress and all of that. It's pretty explosive, and I think that you know you have to have at least your team in place. And President Trump doesn't even have his team in place yet. I mean, there's a lot of people missing, hundreds and hundreds. So, thank you so much, and I hope that helps, and that helps tell you where we're at in this. And God bless you, and enjoy your Sunday. And I will be back